Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick intro lesson on these workbooks. So I'm going to talk about them generally, as well as provide a bit of a lesson on lesson number 1. So this is going to be relevant for both GLE 7s and 8s, as the fiction lesson is a bit of a review, and there really aren't things that I need to separately go over for each grade level. That being said, some of the more specific lessons, such as drama, or science or technical texts, things that are going to provide us with some terms and some skills that we haven't gone over yet, I will provide more information there. This, I just kind of want to give you some strategies and some reminders so that you're making sure that you are taking this seriously and doing some detailed work so that I can use it as information for what we need to go over together when we come back. As this is aligned with each grade level, this is going to be helpful for prepping for the test. So as much as you can read in the workbook and try to instruct yourself on is going to be really helpful, because those are the same kind of skills that you're going to need to use during the test, right? But we will have plenty of time if there are some things you're struggling with. I can see that on Juno, and then we can come back together and do some activities, okay? So the first lesson is fiction. It's been a while since we've talked about fiction, since we've been working on our research, and frankly, been a while since we've worked on much of anything together. So, what's nice about these workbooks is that they do provide information about all the terms that they need you to know in each section, as well as a glossary in the back. So really, I want you to make sure that you guys are using your resources here. So if you turn to the back of the book, even if there's a term that's not completely defined in the beginning of a lesson, you're going to have it in the glossary, okay? So make sure you're using that so that you know what you're looking for. And it's also going to give you a rubric, which is going to look very, very similar to a benchmark rubric for us. So if you have writing questions, we are writing an informative essay right now, and your TIS benchmark goes through purpose, focus, and organization, evidence and elaboration, and conventions, as does this rubric here. So just make sure that the things you're learning at school and the things that are explained in this workbook, you are trying to display in your writing, okay? I understand that when you see a short or extended answer response in one of these workbooks, you just see a few lines, you think, okay, I just need to fill these lines, and that's great, but you need to make sure you're breaking down the questions and getting everything you need, okay? So, back to the front. As I said, make sure you read through the notes. I will provide specific help with certain terms as I see fit, but that's not going to happen for necessarily every lesson, right? So we can use some independence. One thing I do want to go over is point of view, though. Okay, so we talked about point of view in the beginning of the year, but you have 3 types: first person, third person limited, and third person omniscient. So first person is when the narrator is someone going through the story. So they're using pronouns like I and we, right? They're actively going through something, so you as a reader might get their feelings, their thoughts. You are seeing it through their eyes, okay? Then your third person, or when you're using the third person pronouns like he, she, they, right? So your narrator's outside the story, okay? The difference is this omniscient term that you see, and these are also things that are in here, right? So I have taught you this, and it's also referenced in here. Omniscient means all-knowing. So an omniscient narrator is kind of floating above everything, and they can go into the thoughts of any character they want, right? The author has decided, I'm going to write this book or this story in a way that doesn't give me any rules as to what this narrator can see, what this narrator can know. Obviously, it's the writer's choice as to where this narrator goes, but technically, it's all-knowing. There's no limits. Okay, limited obviously does have limits. So limited would be if the narrator is focusing on the thoughts and really the sight of one character. Okay, so if, say the story is focused on me, but it's not through my eyes, the reader will still only know what's happening around me. Okay, so earlier I was in the library with the rest of the teachers, okay? And if the narrator was talking about what was going on in that room, once I moved over here, the narrator is no longer talking about what's happening in that room because I'm not there, right? I am the focus, okay? So now, as exciting as it would be, if there was a story of what I'm doing right now, it would have to exist in this room, in my thoughts, in what I can see, okay, and what I can do. So it's limited, kind of like sitting on the shoulder of just one character, whereas the all-knowing is all-knowing. It can talk about anything that's going on. It can talk about what Mr. Anzaldi is doing in the other room while I'm in here, okay? It doesn't matter. Hope that helps. The reason why this is significant is it affects how the story is told. So for instance, if you had an argument with a sibling and the story that you're telling your parents, it's probably going to look two different ways, right? So if it was, if this was a short story that was written, it would be if you're telling it, it would be first person, right? So, Mom, I did this, he did this, that's it, right? But from their perspective, when they're thinking about it, and they're saying, okay, he did this, and then the other version, it looks totally different, right? That's third person limited because it's going to change the way the story is told. So if the narrator is explaining things through my eyes and not Mr. Anzaldi's, for instance, the day's going to go differently. If something happens and they're trying to figure out whose fault it is, it's going to look differently depending on which character the narrator is focusing on, okay? You're seeing the event through a different point of view. Just think of point of view how you would think of it, as perspective, okay? So it's going to change the way the reader synthesizes the information. It's going to change the way the reader accepts it, right? As opposed to, all right, you do something bad and your parent is able to get this objective, all-knowing view of just what happened rather than what happened through this person's eyes or what happened through this person's eyes. Okay, so those two third-person point of views are quite different, depending on whose perspective they're through. Okay, hopefully that helped. Make sure you read the notes so that you can reference what I'm talking about. I do want to draw your attention to some of the things that these questions are asking. Okay, so if a question, for instance, asks you to, for number one in the 7th grade book, it says, this question has two parts. A lot of them are going to be two-parters. It says, part A, read the following sentences from paragraph 2 of the passage. What do the narrator's descriptions suggest about how he felt about the ship? And you have an A, B, C, or D answer. You're going to look through the passage, and before you do that, you're going to go through and look at part B, because part B asks you to circle words or phrases in the sentences that support the answer to part 1, okay? So as you are looking for your answers to part 1, start doing part B, or part A. Start doing part B, okay? So look for the words and phrases that would support how you think the narrator felt about the trip, okay? The reason why this is a skill that we really need to make sure we're doing and not just, I think this is right, circling an answer, is A, because you want to make sure your answer is right, and B, because whether you're answering a short or a multiple choice question or writing an essay, you need to get into the habit of finding the evidence to support it. Because if you can't find the evidence to support your answer, then how can you prove that it's correct? Okay, so think back to when we read that article on Google. And for any multiple choice questions that you guys got wrong, I had you go back and change your answer, provide a direct quote from the text and an explanation as to how that direct quote supports your new answer. That's a lot of work, but in order to get a question right, sometimes it takes a lot of work. You want to treat these multiple choice questions as short answer questions. Provide your explanation. That's what's great about these questions being worded that way, is it reminds you to do that. And there might be some times where I say that a question in the workbook was kind of hard for me to apply to Juno. So I might just say complete in workbook. Make sure you're still completing it in the workbook because it's still going to be one of those steps, okay? And again, this video is mostly just an introduction to how I want you to go through this workbook, so keep that in mind. I know this is not super exciting. I am going to go to the extended response. So the end of each lesson is going to have an extended response question. And another example, I want to make sure that you guys are doing each part of these. So a summer to remember is the passage in this booklet, and it says a summer to remember has a distinct structure involving flashbacks, present-day narration, and multiple settings. Analyze how the structure and setting of the passage influence its characters and theme. Be sure to use textual evidence from the passage, including dialogue and descriptions, to support your ideas. Write your answer on the lines below. Now, it doesn't tell you how many words you need to use, it doesn't tell you how many pages, but it tells you what you need to have. So that is what you need to focus on. You need to underline flashbacks, present-day narration, multiple settings. Analyze how structure and settings of the passage influence its characters and theme. There is a lot there. It's very rich with questioning. So, in order to do well on this response, you need to make sure you're responding to all of those things. Okay? So, by structure, it means the flashbacks, the present-day narration, the multiple settings. So, how does the fact that this story goes back in time, it tells you what's happening in the present, and it goes through different places. How does that affect the characters and the theme? And remember, the theme is the main idea, the lesson you're supposed to get. How does the author structuring it in that way affect that theme and affect those characters? If it were not structured in that way, would it be able to achieve the things that it did? Think about it like that, okay? Be sure to use textual evidence. Remember, anytime something says textual, you take that word textual. Text, evidence is something to support what you're saying, so you are just taking direct quotes or paraphrasing. Think back to when we just practiced paraphrasing to support what you're saying. Okay, so if you make a statement about the effect, you need to make sure that you are showing in the passage where you found that, okay? Because that's the stuff that I'm going to be looking for, and those are the things they're going to be looking for on your state tests, teachers in high school, anything from this point on. Everything is about supporting what you're saying, okay? Also in those essays. So I just want to draw attention to making sure that we're reading everything closely, and taking our time. Okay, that being said, when you're finished with a lesson, it's going to give you a grade, and that's happened for a lot of you so far. Keep in mind that that grade is going to look pretty low because all it's grading are those multiple choice questions. The short answer ones I have to grade on my own, so it's not going to give you credit for those because it can't grade them. Okay, so don't freak out. Don't freak out really at all about what those numbers are. Again, this is for you to take the time to make sure you're practicing. It's for me to see what we need to work on. And it's just to keep us reading, writing, and practicing these skills. Okay, so let me know if you guys have any questions. Continue to work on these essays and look out for some shorter videos than this one that are actually going to go through some specific terms and some more of these lessons that we might need a little bit more help on. All right, happy Friday.